Well, hey, what's up, everybody? It's Stu Wetstein, and welcome back to the Job Interview Mastery Training course. You've reached the second part of Module 1, where we're going to start talking about your resume. Now, my partner, Amy, is sitting out this section, replaced, well, not that she could be replaced, but sitting in her stead is my trusty flip chart. And in this section, I'm going to tell you everything you could ever need to know about your resume in 5 minutes or less. Sound like a deal? Here we go. The beginning, your resume. Top section, contact info. These days, it's a lot of stuff that can go up there. You need a good email address, you need a cell number, and you need Skype or something, that's going to show that you're digital and you're modern. What I would say about all of these categories is take a moment and think about, are they professional? Do you have a screen name or an email address on Gmail or Yahoo or whatever that you'd be proud of, that won't show up, with someone like me looking at a resume going, oh, really? That's the email address you used? Same thing for your message on your cell phone. And once you start interviewing for jobs, you need to change it from, hey, this is Stu, hit me back, to something that sounds a little bit more professional, because hiring managers, HR professionals, recruiters like myself are going to call you. And if it says something that immediately makes them think, oh, you're not taking this seriously, they're going to move on. Contact info. Now let's get into summary. And most resumes kind of look the same, but what I'm going to give you are the sections that matter, and I'm also going to talk about what you should put in those sections so that you get to the next step of the process. Because this resume, any resume, is designed to just get you to the interview. That's its only purpose. It will never get you a job unless you have something really special on here. All right, let's get into the summary. Most of the time, this is bullets, right? You're going to list 3 or 4 or 5 bullets of something that you think is interesting, whether it's an accomplishment, why that this is a company that makes a lot of sense for you, that you've always wanted to work, for the Spider-Man comics since you were a kid, whatever that story is, this is what goes in here, because all this section really says is, okay, here's Stu's name, what is blah, 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 blah. This is the keep reading section. That's all this says. We want them to move to the next step to say, oh, skills. So in here, bullets or 1 or 2 sentences max. Please don't put your expectations or your desires or your wishes or your objectives or your hopes and your dreams at the top section here, because most recruiters will go up, objective, to seek a position with a company that is a Fortune. No one cares. I hate to break it to you. Don't get your feelings hurt. No one cares. You're just getting out of college. This is just, I can write a good resume, keep reading. Now we get into the skills section, which basically is going to say a couple of things. 1, I've done this before. So if you're applying for something that you already had an internship in or something you have direct experience in, this is the section that says, all right, this seemed a little bit intriguing. Now I get to go, oh, well, this might be someone who actually is a candidate that separates themselves from the rest of the candidates. And how you do that is by saying, I have experience in this, or I don't have any experience in this, and I'm acknowledging that. However, I learn incredibly fast. I love new challenges. I'm incredibly motivated. I'm a self-starter. Something that we talk about all through this program is what makes you unique. What is so special about you? Here, again, a couple of bullets, a sentence or 2. We're not looking for 15 pages here, but why you're unique. What's so special about you? Then they're going to transition to say, okay, you said something interesting. I got it. You've got some kind of skill, or at least you're acknowledging that you're willing to learn a new skill. What have you really done? And then we get into the history part of the resume. And this is something that can freak you out if you're getting out of college, because you can think, well, I don't really have any good work experience, or all the jobs I had before college, I was waiting tables, or I was working, I was making sandwiches, and a lot of times, I may have not shown up for work one day, and I'm concerned about those, how they're going to reflect. Doesn't matter. It's all about what you learned at the job, and unless you had a job that is 1,000% applicable, the reality is pre-college doesn't really matter. But it's got to be professional, and you got to list it properly. What company it was, whether it was a full-time job or an internship, what title you had, if any, how long you worked there. Please don't fall into any kind of trap where you're going to try to make it look like you worked somewhere longer than you really did by not putting the months, or by putting the year, or just by putting your current in 4 different positions. People are going to check. It'll eventually show up, and it ends up looking like an integrity issue. But you want to have titles, dates, and then kind of most importantly, an outcome. Something you did at this job, in your internship, something you did at the company, something you learned, something you were in charge of, a project you were on. Really what we're looking for is a case study. And we'll talk about this a lot during this program. Case study could be a story of success, I was part of a team and we achieved monumental and amazing things, and these are the accomplishments that I was part of. Awesome. That's a great story. But this case study format could also be, I was part of a team, I was part of an internship, and we were part of something that didn't make it. Or I joined a startup, with 3 of my high school friends and we failed, but here's what I learned. This is really starting to get into not so much where you worked, but do you have skills? Do you have a story? Do you have something that, okay, now you got my attention. This all starts to look like a candidate that is motivated, is ambitious, and maybe is, not just cookie cutter. Someone who's got some perspective. And that's what makes recruiters like me call you. Last but not least, hardly least, you want references. Whatever you're going to put down in this reference section, if you're ever going to send a resume anywhere near me, please don't put references available on request, because let me tell you what that says. Hey, by the way, if you ask me for something, if you ask me to supply my references, I'm going to send them to you. Really? Okay, I kind of assumed that you were going to do that. This is a section that you can actually apply some strategy. What you do in your reference section is you start to give even a little bit further insight as to who you are as a person, what kind of professional you're going to be. So if you have references that in any way, shape, or form are connected to the company that you're applying for, you list them by name. Supply them in advance. If you have references that are a professor or a former boss or someone who can vouch for your credibility and your story of success and how hard you work, you list them. And last but not least, if you have somebody who's famous or noteworthy or, an author or something that is going to stand out, and at least it's not going to get you the job. It's just like the resume, but it's going to make a recruiter like me going, they know so-and-so and they listed them as a reference? Weren't they the person who started that company? Well, if that person would vouch for them, okay, let me pick up the phone, let me give Stu a call, and let me see what's so interesting about him. You can use that reference thing. That helps tie all of this together. That's how you take this resume and do the only thing that it is designed for, which is make someone want to move you to the next step in the process. That's everything at this stage of your career that you need to know about the resume. Oh, and the last thing, this whole giant flip chart. Yep, 1 page. Your resume at this point of your career pretty much could be 1 page, unless you've had something in the work history, you've had 1 or 2 jobs, but it doesn't have to be on 1 page. 1.5 pages is fine. 2 pages is even fine at this stage of your career. Good stuff has to be on page 1, because that's as far as I'm ever going to read as the recruiter, unless something piques my attention and makes me read even further. And the other thing I would say about a 1-pager is sometimes you start to wordsmith so much, you start to compress, you start to come up with words, and by the time you get done, you're like, thank God, I got this down to 1 page. The only problem is I have no idea what it says about me because it's so small, and you don't want that. 1.5 pages, 2 pages is fine. That is everything you need to know about your resume. Next, we're going to talk about the cover letter that, of course, has to lead and get this resume in the door. So now that we've spent a lot of time, or an appropriate amount of time, talking about the resume, let's talk about the cover letter. Because the resume doesn't get in the door without a cover letter. And even if you're applying online, most of the time there's some section to insert a cover letter. Number 1, absolutely jumping up and down. I would jump up and down, but it might kind of mess all this up. Please, if there is a section for the cover letter, do not leave it blank. Because it says, I'm not interested, I didn't take the time to put a personalized note here, and I'm hoping that you'll just read this resume and you'll do the math and you'll figure out that I'm the right candidate. You always have a cover letter. Even if they just give you a little field, you can have some compressed version of this. So I'm going to walk you through what I use for my candidates and what I coach candidates to do. And again, in 5 minutes or less, pretty much what you need to know about a cover letter. And it can be a digital cover letter, or it can be old school where you're actually printing it and attaching it to the top of the resume. Never, ever, ever, repeat after me, submit a resume anywhere on earth without a cover letter. Did you do that? Okay, good. Now let's dive in. The beginning. Who is it to? Someone specific. I almost said someone special. I was going to say, oh, isn't that sweet? Someone specific. Do not ever, please ever send a resume at this point in 2013 to whom it may concern. Attention hiring manager. Attention human resources department. No one will look at your resume. You could be the rock star with 50 degrees and the perfect experience, and no one will ever know because they're not going to read past that. Here's why. Because you can go on LinkedIn in this day and age and at minimum figure out who is the head of human resources, who is a human resources generalist, who is a recruiter, who is the CEO if you're doing a marketing campaign and you're just sending your resume in. always, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether you're sending it digitally in an email or you're doing it old school, you spell out to someone specific at the company. Hey, Stu, I'm applying for 4 different jobs, 4 different hiring managers. You guessed it, 4 different cover letters. Because to whom it may concern, no one ever is interested. Am I making that point? And I know I'm jumping up and down a little bit, well, at least on the inside, but that's a key one. No one gets past that. Okay, next section, quick review. As a hiring manager, human resources professional, whomever, what on earth is this about? And why, oh why should I care? Something tight, something small to just get me to the next section. I'm applying for, I'm interested in, I'd like to submit my application for, I'd like to arrange a time to converse with, I'm a fan of. But be specific, because it's amazing how many times I get cover letters that you read the cover letter and you read the resume and you're like, I have no idea what this is about. This doesn't make any sense to me. Okay, now we move on to the next section. Let's talk about the pitch, because this is what this is all about. We're just leading into why you're engaging with this company. You're a fan of them. You're enthusiastic about the brand. You're showing some way that you're already familiar with the company. Whatever that story is, and if you don't have a story, like a simple little hint, anything in the digital age that you might be applying for, please make sure you're at least on the mailing list, the subscriber list. You don't have to spend money, but if you some way can be a customer, because people check that. But this section, this is what this is about, right? You're trying to set up, hey, here's who I am, here's what I'm asking for, and this is why, because I'm successful. I'm already from this profession. I'm already from this space. I already have some kind of experience that's going to make it interesting. Or I failed at something. I was part of a startup, or 3 friends and I from high school, we started a company, but it didn't make it. That either of those, they equal the number one reason the companies probably hire you, but more importantly, move on to the resume, move on to get to know more, is your perspective. So whatever your story is, this is tight, 1 or 2 sentences. This whole thing, could be on LinkedIn. We're talking 4, 5, 6 sentences, because as a recruiter, I look at this as the commercial within the commercial. This is just a teaser to get me to go, okay, you know what, let me go ahead and flip the page here, which if any of these cause that at any time, then they've been successful. That's what we're trying to get to do. We're trying, just like with the resume has 1 point, right, just to get you to the job interview. Cover letter, it's just teeing that resume up. All of this is designed to get me to go, all right, I want to know a little bit more. That's the purpose of the cover letter. That's the purpose of the resume. Okay, but now you need a strategy and you need to prepare. So we're going to talk all about that coming up in Module 2.